Thanks for your patience. Let's see. I need to change noise suppression off. Perfect. Link. Cool. How's everybody doing today? Thanks for getting on for another AMA. Some tea. Okay. So I'm pretty well done with this weekend. Kendall's going to be working on a new build using the new 5.1 code. So there's some adjustments I want to make to the difficulty for the mining to kind of improve that, to make it a little bit smoother. So I'm going to be doing that. So there's going to be a hard fork in this. So we're most likely going to have a series of releases. Right, we're going to start with the initial desktop wallet release, which is going to, require exchanges to upgrade, and we're essentially going to start that hard fork process right now. Tentatively, I can confirm it in about a week, but tentatively, I'm planning, because Bittrex wants about a month of update runway, right? So tentatively, I'm shooting for January 11th for the activation of the hard fork. By next week, we'll be able to confirm that for sure, to just make sure everything's done, everything's running, everything's going as it should. So that's done, which is good. I've been thinking around with the network layer. I've been fixing just a couple little stray bugs here and there, some from Mike, some from other people. And so everything's really running really well there. I've been following up with some of the 3D interface people. They're building a really, really cool platform. It's basically like a Meta, right? But they need help with back-end stuff. So we're continuing to discuss collaboration where Nexus powers the back end. And another really big use case that we're going to be focusing on directly after this, 5.2, I want to release the peer-to-peer messenger API and the crypto API and a basic file system API. Those are really, really important features to develop right now, because it just, we need decentralized communication. The peer-to-peer messenger API will actually use quantum resistant encryption as well, using Saber, as a quantum resistant key exchange mechanism. So we'll have fully quantum resistant peer-to-peer messaging API. You'll be able to use that to develop your own Signal or Telegram messengers, have groups, and then that will really tie us together too for our chats, right? The first iteration will most likely not include the group feature. It'll just be peer-to-peer. But when we get to the group feature, it'll allow you to create chat rooms essentially, and you'll be able to create cryptographic blockchain authenticated chat rooms, which means, for instance, in example with us, we'll want to have a chat room for people with SIG chains, right? So if you created a SIG chain, you'll be able to join into the main general chat room, and then we'll want to have another one for embassies, right? Which is if you've staked on that embassy on the DAO, then you gain entry into that chat room. So that way we'll be able to have some sort of reputation system built into our chat reputations. You won't be able to create multiple accounts. It'll basically, and you'll be authenticated based on your trust. So in order to gain, speaking access, quote unquote, you'd have to have a certain level of trust, and we'll be able to program those parameters. So think of it as like programmable chat rooms. That's where the peer-to-peer messenger is going, right? Is the framework. And I think the only other thing that I've seen that is close to it is the Matrix messaging network, where they're trying to build like a framework. Like if anybody's used Riot chat, Riot it runs on Matrix, right? So Nexus in itself will be that, right? And if anybody's following this Twitter stuff and Elon and seeing what he's doing, he's really trying to create like a WeChat, of basically the American version of WeChat, which if anybody's not familiar with it, you can pay for your stuff, you can do markets, you can message people, you can post, it's like a one-stop shop. That's what Nexus is really becoming, but in a decentralized way, right? So all of these APIs and frameworks, you can build all these applications on top of it, but it becomes through one seamless, essentially, interface that you'll be able to interact with. So the peer-to-peer messaging is, I think, really important. I'm looking forward to that, and logistically, it'll come in really handy if you have to send coins to someone. Okay, I'm going to open up a message and send them a message to their username, right? And then when they come online, they get the message, they respond. You can coordinate times, things like that. But also as an application developer, you'll be able to securely transmit information between different apps, right? Different dApps using quantum resistant communication, right? And then the eventual final end product will essentially be kind of like a smart contract programmable chat room. Right, so you can say, hey, here's this chat room. You need to have this, or you need to have this asset issued to you, or any sort of blockchain related logic. You'll be able to weave that in to the actual chat. And one of the biggest necessities of this is the duplicate account issues, bots. Right, There's lots of bots all over the internet. We don't know who's real, who's not. Someone can make 10 accounts and use that to try to sow false narratives. This will just completely eliminate that. Period. You'll be tied to your trust key, so that will also set the stage for how our voting kind of evolves. Use case wise, what I'm really focusing on after 5.1 is geospatial marketplaces. So imagine you can go to a map of a city, like a 3D map of a city, kind of like Google Maps. And then within that city, you can do a search. Say, hey, I want to find apples. And then boom, it'll show up. Oh, here's an apple tree. This person says you can go grab their apples for free. Or here's, a person that's selling apples on this marketplace. You can do a communication to go pick up those apples, and that'll be driven by the DEX, right? But another really important component, which is something else that we're going to be working on, at least us, as a use case, is a peer-to-peer Uber application where you have a collateralized transportation system. So, if you have apples, let's say, use an example of Phoenix, on one side of Phoenix, and they need to be transported to another side of Phoenix, and you happen to be driving that way, you pick up the apples as long as you, have your collateralized contract active and transport those apples over to, some other part of the city. And now you have your own decentralized, basically distribution systems. As you all know, one of the fundamental qualities of what we're doing is decentralize everything, right? So the Uber app will be basically free to use because you won't really have any infrastructure that needs to be maintained. So the driver will keep 100% of what they earn, right? And then developing this collateralized transportation system into it, we can eventually scale that up into semi-trucks. Even, a semi-truck driver, I'm a freelance truck driver. I'm, in California, I need to transport this to Arizona. Okay, I'm going to pick up the trailer, as long as you have enough collateral on the contract, which acts kind of as a decentralized insurance, then, you're able to transport it. And so, if you during the transport lose the whole truckload, let's say, then, the smart contract will forfeit your collateral, right? So that's what I mean when I say collateralized transportation systems. That's really, really going to be really important. And we're seeing a lot of issues with Uber and Lyft and everything already. This will be fully decentralized, but it's going to be powered through a three-dimensional interface. And that's one thing that I'm talking with these guys about. They basically have developed like a Meta type system. And it's like you can go on a table and click on a document or a piece of paper on a table, and it pulls up a Google Doc, right? It's really, really, really cool tech, and it's setting it one step from augmented reality, which, if the AR VR debate, I'm more for AR than VR. Virtual reality versus augmented reality. The difference being virtual reality is you're in an entirely encompassed reality, where augmented reality is you're adding things or augmenting them and increasing them on top of the existing world, right? Like Pokemon Go, for instance, was an augmented reality app. So that's where we really want to see it. And, the technology is not there yet. Obviously, Google's been working on some glasses for a while where, you can have different heads-up displays and everything, and, interfacing in that way. But that's really like a step towards also wanting to develop a full three-dimensional interface in the way we want to change the fundamental way that you interact in computing, right? And, even simple things like particle effects. If anybody, I remember when Cardano first came out, there was all these particles, and when you move the mouse, and people just sit there for hours, just like watching the particles, right? Adding some sort of like real life qualities to using the computer. Instead of clicking all these little flat windows, you more so enter into a world in which you can organize all your information in a physical space, in a three-dimensional space. And they've done some really cool things with developing logistics supply chains, and they've replicated different farms so that you could go over by like a shed essentially, and on the shed there's a little list of the people that have checked in and out, right? So you kind of have this geospatial information management systems, right? And their back end needs some work, so we're in talks right now about kind of integrating it as somewhat of a use case for them to power the back end. And then we're discussing other aspects such as the geospatial markets. But the geospatial marketplaces and the peer-to-peer Uber app, I think, are really, really fundamental for the future. If anybody's seen what's happening in Netherlands and Europe with the green agendas, and I mean even in UK there's egg shortages, or eggs are ridiculously high. They're saying it's from this bird flu, but the reality is the farmers are saying that the grocery stores are still paying them under their actual profitable margins, so they're squeezing all of these farmers. And all of this infrastructure that we've come to rely on that has taken us this far, it really is becoming a tool to control people, right? China seeing their COVID passports. If it turns yellow, you can't even buy food anymore, right? And that's a big issue that we need to resolve. So the best way to do that is to create a natural a geospatial system in which people can engage in their own order discovery and transportation, and then eventually that can drive into developing our own actual physical marketplaces that become more like DAO-driven grocery stores and things like that. Because food is the really fundamental, most important thing right now. I'm seeing, the World Economic Forum is talking about eating bugs, and we're seeing egg farms burning up left and right. And ironically, people have the capability to grow their own food and to power these, or even to discover these local areas. But we're really bounded by the grocery stores and all these corporate interests. So the idea of this is to take those corporate interests away, take that power away, and give it to the people. Just like one man's trash is another man's treasure, right? The simple movement of, hey, I need to go drive here for this appointment. Oh, I can transport this package, and I can actually earn money and monetize what I'm naturally already doing, right? And so that's the design goals with that. And then obviously the peer-to-peer messaging too, on top of the peer-to-peer messenger API, will have a nice front-end interface, not released with 5.1. Obviously the framework itself will be released with 5.2, but once that framework is released, then we'll be able to start having people building messenger apps on it, and we'll run one of our own, or maybe integrate it into the wallet itself, so that you'll essentially have your own Signal messenger, but without any central servers, without any central infrastructure, and fully quantum resistant encryption. Just like David Chum, he just released the XX messenger, talking about basically using quantum resistant encryption. I'm not sure exactly what he's using, but we're kind of going one step down from that, where we're building a framework that's a quantum resistant peer-to-peer messaging system that can be used to transmit words, but you can also use it to transmit binary data if you need to securely transfer a file between different computers. So everything's done, which feels good. Sorry for my absence for the last month. I've been dealing with a lot of family stuff, but it's all settled down pretty well now, and everything's been running pretty well. I've over the past few weeks, I've been fighting some DDoS attacks and stuff on some seed nodes and whatever, but that's all sealed and fixed now. So essentially, yeah, the release date is most likely going to be 2 to 3 weeks before January 11th, as far as the release of the wallet itself. I'll have to confirm with Kendall and Christo, but as far as back end, that's pretty well done. I've just synced, client mode on the new protocols and everything like that. I'm just adding a couple little optimizations in the network layer. So, by next week, we'll have a good idea of the new wallet release. And once that one's out, and we make sure that it's thoroughly debugged, we'll start the process of adding it to the App Store. So the release schedule will essentially be, new desktop wallet with a time lock activation in it for January 11th is the tentative time that we're shooting for right now. Get exchanges to upgrade on that. That gives you a lot of the new features, Tritium++, built into your desktop wallet, and then we start the process of adding the mobile wallet to the App Store and the Play Store. I think there's one issue on Android with the new Android operating system that we're still tracking, as far as how we're doing React Native and stuff like that. But otherwise, there's been no technical snags. It's just been managing time, appropriately, with all the things that are happening in personal life too. So I'm feeling pretty good about everything. So I'm suspecting around Christmas time is probably a good estimation. As people have been wanting a Christmas present for a while, so I think we'll make it this year, which is really good. And then I've been talking with a lot of other people too, developing kind of new use cases. I was just on the phone with, discussing, some pretty new big killer apps and talking to the right people and stuff like that. Anarchapulco, we're scheduled. We're doing, as I said last time, we're doing 2 workshops, and I'm speaking. And then we're gonna be, Ron Paul should be there again this year. We're gonna be playing dinner time music, harp, cello, piano stuff for Ron Paul, and some of those other things, and potentially playing an open set, and then some new cool experimental technologies too. We'll share that when we get to the Anarchapulco, but it's visual frequency based neural rewiring systems, where what if if our brains and subconscious act somewhat like computers, right? People, you see all these subliminal messaging in different videos and music videos and stuff, right? It's all programmed in the subconscious. What if you can do that, but in reverse? What if you can decontaminate? What if you can deprogram a lot of those things? So a few people know about it. It's an interesting little tool, but we'll be presenting some of that at Anarchapulco as well, because we're talking about building new voting systems and new democratic systems. Well, if people have traumas, then they're going to be voting and reacting based on those traumas. So there needs to be a healing in some way, shape, or form of humanity in order for us to really be effective self-governors, right? I think that's one of the reasons that we're in the situation that we're in right now, is because people haven't been able to effectively self-govern. And in order for democracies to really work, you need to have educated people, and they need to not be developing things based off of trauma response, right? So that's another whole psychological part. If you guys haven't put it together yet, Nexus is called Nexus because it's a connection or series connection linking two or more things. That thing can be anything, right? And the fundamental philosophy is decentralize everything. And there's there's lots of problems that need to be solved. So we're building technology to target each one of these individual problems at different levels that all kind of connect and weave together to create Nexus itself. So I suspect from here we're going to be seeing things deploying a lot more rapidly. I've done a lot of, like I said, the foundational work to get the framework built essentially that we can start building on top of. So the peer-to-peer messenger API, I might actually release that in the crypto API before we go too deep into some of the other features such as the file system and the VPN system. The peer-to-peer messenger and crypto API I think are really fundamentally important. And they basically make privacy-driven applications really easy to deploy and develop. So those are going to be my primary focuses after this, which you'll start to see betas and we'll start to be able to access it and play with it. And I look forward to the day when you can go into your Nexus mobile wallet and send a message to someone else on Nexus through their username and know that it's encrypted, it's secured, it's quantum resistant. There's no central servers. There's no anything that you have to worry about, being spied on. You have fully encrypted system using quantum resistant encryption. So I'm really excited about that. I mean, it's becoming more and more prevalent these days that even things like Signal or Telegram can be easily compromised. So we need to have decentralized headless systems that don't have any place that people themselves can actually take over, right? So I appreciate everyone's patience. You guys are troopers. It's been a lot of prerequisites that have been pushing the timelines out and getting all the things done right. I appreciate everybody being patient to allow me the time to get it done right in the way I feel, because that's just one way I have to create it. If it's not beautiful, if it's not the best I can do, it's hard for me to be motivated to do it. I can't build things that just are not beautiful to me, right? So it's beautiful to me. It's doing really well. I've been really impressed with how it's all been evolving and how everything's fitting together. So it's really nice. So like I said, Kendall will be able to start the integration of the new 5.1 core this weekend. So everything's going to be wrapped up, and we'll, depending on his timeline, probably sometime next week, we'll get the next beta version, and then we'll want everybody to test that as much as possible. Make sure you just are a stickler. If there's something that you think is not right, let us know and we'll fix it. We want to make the mobile wallet release, as best as we possibly can, which is going to just require participation from you guys. There's one bug on the testnet that I'm working on with AonWise, and then there's one bug related to the summations and operators that I just fixed, and then there's one bug that Mike just had from a DDoS attack on his API. I need to investigate that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. It's nothing that's a snag by any means. It's all pretty well there. And then I shored up the network protocol as well over the last few weeks, even between family issues. I was able to still get some things done, and having little hacker wars. Oh, you're doing this, I'm gonna do this now. Having some fun with that. So everything's pretty well shored up. And I figured since it's been such a long time, I might as well put a little bit of extra code into some of the difficulty adjustments and the mining difficulty. That's always, it still fluctuates quite a bit. So I'm just getting the mathematics correct on that. So that's going to be part of our hard fork release. And I think that'll give you guys a little bit more of a predictable timeline And I'm going to do my very, very best to start giving you guys more predictable timelines from here forward. Since I've been doing all this prerequisite, never been done before type of stuff, it's very difficult to predict when it's going to be done. But now that I've gotten a lot of the frameworks built, and the lower level library, lower level database, lower level protocol, and a lot of the new API framework, if anybody wants to check it out, I think Kendall wrote some documentation on it. It makes it really easy to develop a new API. The supply chain API reduced from a few thousand lines of code to 200 lines of code. It's just all templated, built in. And then the decentralized exchange running. I want to add assets to the decentralized exchange. So you can, for instance, say, hey, I buy this name record from a namespace and I want to put it for sale and purchase it for this much Nexus. And then I've been talking with other people too about, probably not super near term, but I want to showcase our technology for Bitcoin, right? And instead of trying to be better than Bitcoin all the time and we're the best, we're going to destroy Bitcoin, we're the Ethereum killer. How about we contribute back, right? Because if it wasn't for Bitcoin, we wouldn't be here. Let's all be honest with that. Okay, anybody that says they're the first, whatever, if it was not for Satoshi, none of us would be here. And I feel a duty to give back to that, right? And even with Bitcoin maximalism, there's still ways that we can weave in, right? By showing people new technology, right? For instance, using the new lower level database, you increase the throughput on Bitcoin substantially because it's at least 4 or 5 times faster than level DB. So you get faster syncing, faster load, instant load time. And since it doesn't actually have to store all of the keys in the keychain, it just stores a compressed key as a part of the hash map. We'll be able to reduce I think I last saw the data required was about 30% less. So, you take a 300 gigabyte blockchain and make it a 200 gigabyte blockchain. But what I really ultimately want to do is take the same type of client mode code that we've developed, which I don't believe has been fully developed on Bitcoin, and take a Bitcoin core node and run the lower level database into it, and then have a light mode built into it, or even building it into the Nexus protocol, because we do support legacy code, right? So with some slight modifications and adding the right keys in, you should be able to actually run a Bitcoin client in parallel to that. And then, this was suggested by the community to be able to use your SIG chain to generate keys that are used to hold your Bitcoins, so that your Nexus becomes kind of like your Bitcoin password manager, so that you can essentially hold your Bitcoin in your Nexus wallet, but in a way that you're not going to have to require this 300 gigabyte blockchain size. We'll release an LOD full Bitcoin node if people want to run a Bitcoin node using the lower level database, which if anybody's used Bitcoin, or even remembers using Nexus pre-Tritium, open up the app and waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Oh, now it finally opens, right? Nexus instant load. So you'll get things like that, instant load of Bitcoin. It'll sync faster. It'll be using the lower level protocol, things like that, which should be fairly easy to modify since, we did bridge in from some of our legacy systems. I can just add another legacy bridge, with some slight modifications. Packets themselves. Whoa. Okay. With some slight modifications to the packets themselves. And you should, essentially have, a very basic, Bitcoin wallet integrated in your Nexus wallet, but using the client mode technology that we've developed to essentially manage your keys through your Nexus SIG chain and manage your addresses that way. And then ultimately, what I'd like to get that towards is atomic swaps, right? Since we still support legacy transactions, Bitcoin, I'd like to build a type of atomic swapping system into the wallet, so that can be a non-KYC way for people to get involved in Nexus. And that's really like, the Binance thing, you could say it was good or you could say it was bad. The term, the Binance curse, exists for a reason. The curse is that once you get listed on Binance, you just get dumped into oblivion and then you die. Thankfully we did not fall to that fate, but if you look at our record of when we got listed on Binance to now, it's been down, right? It's been nice to see our market has been holding up well with these Bitcoin crashes and stuff. We've been gaining some ground, which has been good to see. But ultimately, I would like to see us get on as much decentralized infrastructure as possible. So the ATM network as well, I can talk a little bit about that. I'm developing it as an open source architecture, but essentially that's how we do decentralized fiat. And it's almost done, but I'm working with some guys too. We've been discussing since the Binance thing that they're working on ATMs, and they want to include this as a feature in their ATM, where essentially you ride on the DEX essentially, but you use a mix of stablecoins and Nexus to do it. So a simple example would be I have an ATM. Let's say there's 3 ATMs in Phoenix. One's in downtown Phoenix, one's in Chandler, one's in Tempe. Now, let's say you set the maximum cash that you want the ATM to hold. Generally, is about $50,000, but let's just say 10,000 just for now. So when you create the ATM, you create a stable token, right? That stable token represents that ATM's cash. So what the ATM will recognize is if I transfer 100 of that ATM stable token to that ATM, then $100 cash will come out. Or if I put $100 cash into that ATM, then 100 tokens will be transferred to my mobile wallet, right? So that's the first step, which is kind of like, think of it as like a lockbox, right? It's no different than paying 25 cents to lock your clothes up at a swimming pool in a public facility, right? It's a locker. So, but the claim slip is the stable token. And then what happens from there is people then through the geospatial market say, okay, well, I need to unload some of my Nexus and I need to get some cash. Well, I'm going to put an order on the Nexus on maybe the downtown Phoenix ATM. And based on how many orders are there, you're going to have a different price, right? So the downtown Phoenix ATM may have a higher price of Nexus because there's more demand for Nexus, right? And less demand for the fiat, so there's more people buying. So you could go in and say, okay, there's somebody with a buy order. They want 100 Nexus. I'm going to sell that. And then what you're doing is you're actually trading that for that ATM stable token. And so then, in your mobile wallet, you do that from home. Hey, I need to cash out of this ATM. You cash it out, you fulfill someone's order. That person then therefore gets the Nexus, and then they can take that Nexus to any other ATM if they want. You get that stable token that they had, right, through the decentralized exchange. And then you take that 100 coins, you go to the downtown Phoenix, ATM, and you deposit those 100 tokens in there, and then boom, you get $100 out, right? And then vice versa, the same way, I put $100 in, I get 100 stable tokens, and then I go find an order where somebody's selling Nexus, and I use that stable token to purchase. Now these stable tokens will be locked to each specific ATM. So what's going to happen is each ATM will have their own exchange rate, essentially based on the supply and demand of that area. So let's say the Phoenix ATM is trading at, in the future, $1, and the Tempe ATM is trading at $1.15 because there's more students that are buying Nexus, that particular day. And since people are buying more Nexus, there's going to be less of the actual, or there's going to be more cash, in that ATM. And when the ATM starts getting full, it can't emit any more cash, right? That's going to be driving the price up even more. So what you'll get is a type of arbitrage where I can go to this ATM in downtown Phoenix and I can buy the Nexus for $1, and then I can go to the ATM in Tempe and I can sell it for $1.20 or $1.10, whatever. And then that's going to equalize the prices between these ATMs. And that solves a huge issue with ATM operators, is moving the money. Conventional Bitcoin ATMs, you have to go to an exchange, buy the Bitcoin, load the Bitcoin into the Bitcoin exchange, into the Bitcoin ATM. Then people buy and sell, the cash. And then once you fill it up with cash, and you have to take all that cash, put it in a bank, and then use that bank to then go to an exchange and buy it. And this is how ATM operators aren't considered money transmitters, is because they're not actually doing the exchanging, right? They're riding on some sort of exchange infrastructure. And that's what the decentralized exchange could do for us, right? So the ATM operators are not considered money transmitters. You just essentially, hey, I deposit, it's like your safety deposit box. You go to a post office and, get one of those too. And there's not money transmitter, regulations associated with it. So with that arbitrage, you're going to have people naturally moving money between these ATMs, and people make a business of it too. Hey, I'm going to just play the spread of all the ATMs in Phoenix. And what that's going to do is that's going to take, ATMs that have a lot of cash in them, right? Those are going to have a different exchange rate that will incentivize people to pull the cash out, right? And to put orders for Nexus in. And then, other ones that have low cash, they'll bring the cash to there. And so that'll start to equalize the cash balances in all these different ATMs. And then it allows these ATMs to all be independently operated and owned. And, being generic based off of a stable coin, you can make that stable coin represent any specific currency. So you can put these in any country, and boom, you have decentralized fiat, right? And then the ATM operator can take a trade fee every time those trades are executed. Anytime somebody deposits or withdraws their stable coin, you take 1% or whatever of, cash or whatever you wanted, or Nexus. And, so then it becomes a business for you. So you'll get all these different participants that are able to exchange between one another through these decentralized ATMs. And it really will be difficult to regulate that too, because it's going to be decentralized. It'll be headless, and there won't be any exchange that's actually executing anything. It's just this decentralized protocol, right? With the way that DEX works right now is every order is actually indexed on chain. So there's no server that you're talking to say, hey, what are the orders? It's completely decentralized. So there's no actual infrastructure that it requires to run. All it needs is just another peer running on Nexus, right? And then you just build up your own independent indexes. So that's going to be a really, really powerful technology. That's where, after all the Binance stuff, it's just really caused me to shift and pivot to be, okay, well, we need to just decentralize all this stuff. It's been a long time coming. We've been wanting to have, this stuff built, but to me, it was impetus to really drive that forward. So yeah, that's pretty much, I think I'll have to update this time. I'm working on a few use cases in the background. That's why I was just on a call before this. Pretty well connected people. I'm reaching out to kind of, for lack of better words, building an army. It's time. I mean, the world is not going in a good direction. We need to do something about it. And so, that's one of the fundamentals of Nexus, is to connect those people together. So I've been kind of out there putting feelers out to all the different people. And we're growing. So Anarchapulco this year too is going to be about 1,000-person event. I'm speaking, and as I said, we're doing 2 workshops. One on kind of like the neurological rewiring, and then another one on the social architecture and social organizational systems, and then obviously my speech. And then I'm pretty sure we might be doing some live art. My lady is going to be doing some live art, and I think we're going to open up with an HSP set and debut some cool stuff. And then I think Ron Paul's going to be there this year too. Again, they decided to have Ron Paul come this year, and so just got invited to do some special dinners, playing some piano and stuff for Ron, and maybe I'll reach out to him again. I still have his phone number and check in with him and maybe have dinner with him. But the network's growing, the Nexus is growing, and we've got the right people. There's, I've been fortunate to have the right people kind of cross my path over the many years. And this year I've been, as I've gotten all this stuff to fruition, I've been waiting before, I reached out to too many of them. But that's what I'm in the process of doing right now, is bringing the right people together, helping empower them, give them tech stacks that will help them deploy their, applications, and, finding the right, well-connected people that understand, the need for what we're developing. And, Buckminster Fuller, essentially, you don't change things by fighting the existing reality. You change things by creating a new model that renders the existing model obsolete. And so I'm finding the people that think like that. The person that I actually just spoke with grew up with Buckminster Fuller. Well, her father worked closely with Buckminster Fuller, which is really cool. So, the right people are getting involved and working on the right use cases, right? NFTs and speculative crypto stuff, and yay, it's all cool in conceptual land, but when you get to practical world use, well, my phone died, and now my hard drive got corrupted, and now I don't have my keys, and now all my files are gone. Oops. Well, it's encrypted though, at least. So there's so many technical issues, and blockchain really, I don't think, has found those killer use cases yet. It's all been speculative use cases. I mean, look at NFTs. It's a perfect example. Jack Dorsey's first tweet, I think, sold for $40 million, and then it just sold for $200. It's speculative. So we're focusing on practical applications. So the ones that we're focusing on right now are geospatial marketplaces, using the peer-to-peer marketplace to allow people to create food supply chains, and that also doubles up as supply chain tracking, so people can create their own locally bound, food networks, right? And then the second is a type of peer-to-peer Uber app, which the initial implementation can simply be, I'm driving you to and from here, and you use trust and reputation, obviously, and people submit their reviews on chain. So you can have a decent reputation system that doesn't require central authorities like Uber. So you make sure you don't get, axe murdered, in your car or whatever, and then collateralized transportation too. So, just not using the natural byproducts of people's movements. People are always moving across cities. In Phoenix, people are driving to and from Chandler to Phoenix to Tempe all the time. A lot of times, they live in Chandler, they work in Tempe, and they got to commute every day. And there's packages that need to move from Chandler to Tempe every day too, right? So you utilize those natural movements so that people can actually start to monetize the byproducts of their movements, through these types of apps, right? Okay, well, I need to go drive to Phoenix, and somebody needs a package delivered here. I can just drop this package off on my way and then earn gas money, right? So that I can start driving for free. And that's going to be really important too for the geospatial markets, especially once you start getting into merchandise. I'm developing my own store. I sell jewelry or I sell this. Like you can either go to a market point where you can sell it, or you can put up a contract to say, hey, I need this delivered to somebody in Tucson or even somewhere else, and people can start to earn money that way. And then focusing on the messaging too, and the social media stuff. And then in the lab's almost done. I'm like I said last time, I'm testing the Beefield Brown effect, which is intriguing to say the least. I'm not sure exactly what's happening. There's a lot of different theories on it. I'm verifying the results myself to see if that could potentially serve as a usable propulsion system for us. My logic, one reason I've kind of gotten away from rockets is I watched people put up satellite infrastructure that even was using licensed frequencies, and they still got choked at the rocket company. When you have only Rocket Labs or Phantom or SpaceX or just a few rocket manufacturers, and you're developing a disruptive decentralized communication protocol, it's not going to be in your favor to be accepted, right? Generally, they try to regulate you with frequencies, which we have figured a way around with the ISM, Industrial Scientific Medical. But you have all these choke points and these central points of failures. And so ultimately, like, for us to be able to develop like a little drone, right, that uses its own electrical propulsion that can actually deliver some of these satellites up, I think that's going to be really important. I really want to lower the barrier of entry for deploying satellites. And depending on how this plans out, using a strong electric field, the strong electric field may actually repel beta particles and alpha particles, which are really fundamental killers of your satellites, right? You get, for anybody that I haven't explained it to you, the transistors, they have a base, collector, and emitter. Now your base essentially, collector, emitter, yeah, your base receives a positive voltage, and when that voltage gets over a certain threshold, then the switch switches on, right? A beta particle, if anybody is not aware, is just an electron floating around. So if you can imagine, you get a bunch of electrons bombarding this transistor, and over time, even if there's no power actually to that base, it'll flip on, which means a 0 will become a 1 when it shouldn't be, which means all the numbers that you're dealing with in code now are not the numbers that you intended them to be. And that's one reason why satellite hardware is so expensive, is because you have all this radiation hardening required. In low Earth orbit, it's not as prevalent of a problem because you're still beneath the Van Allen radiation belt, and you're also within the magnetic field still. And the magnetic field does repel, right, a lot of radioactive particles. So, utilizing strong electric fields for propulsion, if it pans out the way we want, it could also act to protect against radiation, which means that we'll be able to fit more consumer grade hardware into it. So those are things that I'm really focused on, because I really want, ideally I would like to cost a couple $1,000s for you to put up your own satellite, and I think that's what we really need. 100,000 is pretty much what it is right now for radiation hardened, but and then you have launch costs and everything, and then you have orbital, you're deorbiting. When you get your frequency license, you have to show the time that it's going to deorbit, and so on and so forth. So that's all coming together. I'm still just waiting on my lab to be finished, so I'm working on that as quickly as I possibly can. But that's coming together really well. Everything's really coming together really well, and like I said, the right people have been getting back to me. It's been cool. I've been just kind of reaching out to old contacts, and I've been getting really good reception. We still have a really good reputation from all the conferences we've done and all the people that I've spoken with before. So I'm kind of reawakening a lot of those connections and getting it rolling. So by next week, I'll be able to let you guys know, once I see kind of how Kendall's doing and Chris is doing with the front end. We'll be able to give you an official release date. The tentative release date is around Christmas time, and the tentative hard fork date will be, if it's around Christmas time, it will be at the minimum, mid-January for it to activate with some of the new features. And then, as I said, 5.1.5.2 or 5.2 will be being done. I mean, a lot of that time is activation period, right? Just waiting for people to update. So during that, I'll be focusing on the 5.2 infrastructure and releasing betas on that. And so everything's looking really good. We don't have any development plan yet for the Uber app. The geospatial marketplace, though, I've got front-end guys, like I told you, that develop 3D interfaces. and they've actually modeled three-dimensional cities. So I think that would be really the coolest thing to see. These new interfaces. We need some sort of incentives where, when you're using this app, it's no longer just, I'm using an app, but it becomes a full-fledged experience, right? It's an interactive experience, interacting with your computer. Imagine if your windows could be in a 3D and you could arrange them in all these different ways and have, instead of having to go find this folder with this name and this folder and this folder and this folder and this file, you have spatial organization of your information, right? And these guys really developed this because of working in the military. He was an analyst, and he dealt with all these geospatial, what are they called, spreadsheets, and he said it was just totally a crazy amount of logistical errors because they're using all these two-dimensional planes to deal with all this three-dimensional information. And so he started to really imagine what a three-dimensional app and a three-dimensional interface would really feel like, and they've developed it, and it's really incredible. Next time I talk to them, I'll ask if I can share. They have a couple apps on the App Store in which you can do that, and they call it Spaces, and they really ultimately have wanted to run this 3D world interface stuff on top of an operating system, which is what we're doing. And I've wanted to have a 3D interface on top of the operating system, so it works out really well. So that's a really cool use case. So I think we'll be developing more collaboration over the coming months and years to developing these apps. And then I'm starting to look into, just running a simple Google map over, to build basic navigation stuff for like the Uber app, because that's essentially what we'll need, just as the more complex features. And then obviously we'll be able to use, our trust system and reputation and, ratings and, crypto, obviously, to utilize it. So, when we have the decentralized ATM network, that will really help a lot, because then you can say, okay, well, I can pay you in Nexus, and then you can go very easily liquidate that for cash, or I can pay you even in a stable token for the Tempe ATM, right? And it'll have to be driven through crypto. So I think that's going to be really big for helping generate and drive liquidity into Nexus and get people trading in the markets more. And then I still need to reach out to the market maker. I had started discussions with them a number of months ago. They say they really believe in the project. They've been following us for a number of years. They wanted to help us, in smoothing out liquidity and generating, basically a stronger market. So I'm going to be reaching out to them as well, and kind of discussing a little bit more about how that's going to unfold. But yeah, it's been it's lots been going on, to say the least. But lots has been getting done too, so I can't really complain. The team morale seems to be doing really good. Everybody's doing pretty good, working together. So we have a joint budgeting session we're going to need to do at the end of the year. That's going to be establishing quarterly branch budgets between ambassador developer branches. So we're going to be doing that AMA style over Telegram, and we invite you guys to participate and give your input, and then it'll essentially go to a vote of the chairs to ratify the budget for the next quarter. And then we're going to be doing that consistently from here. I've been kind of slacking on that, but Phil's been really helping pull that up and do really good with that. Let's see, helium balloon in the stratosphere, one shot of fuel. Yeah, Themed, the helium balloons, my friend Jane Pointer, she helped design the Biosphere 2 out here in Arizona. They're doing, it's called Space Perspective, I believe. And they're doing just that, helium balloons, no emissions. They're doing it because it's called the overview effect, where they found studies that, once you go to space and you see the planet, it triggers this type of humanitarian desire in people. It's really interesting. It's called the overview effect. You should check it out if you haven't. And Jane Pointer, really, she's idealistic like us, and she wants to help heal some of those psychological issues with people, one of which you can do through just showing people where you really live and how vast everything is, and how we're more one planet rather than all individual countries. So she's doing that with helium balloons, but I'm not going that way. You got so many atmospheric issues. I'm going more for the electrical propulsion systems, based off of the B-field-Brown effect. We'll see how it all pans out. Modern conventional science talks about it, saying it's electrofluid mechanics, where you're creating ion winds from the high voltage discharge But if you do the calculations in the actual ion wind thrust, it only accounts for about 30% of the thrust. So there's some other forces at work there that I'm going to be studying a bit more. I'm not claiming that this is the end all be all. I'm not saying I've discovered all these new propulsions. I just want to be really clear. I'm studying some of these effects that have been known for quite a bit of time. It can be a little bit fringe. People try to affect. Some people get a little woo woo. I just want to be really clear. These are studies. I'm assessing, if this is something that we can actually use, because the design requirement is I would like to lower the cost of satellite deployment and also, increase the capacity, the launch capacity, right? If every satellite had its own onboard propulsion where it could essentially launch itself, I mean, these networks will materialize very, very quickly, especially when there's money to be made in it. I'm reached out to some other people. I should be getting on phone with him in the next few weeks. I'm not going to say the name, but some pretty big names. I know some pretty big name people who've just been shooting the shit for a number of years. So we're going to get him on a call. He will be. It could be very big for us if we get his support. I asked for a little help with marketing and stuff with it. He's been on the decentralized internet train for a while too. So we'll see if that pans out. Like I said, I've been doing a bit of biz dev in parallel with all of this development, because I've been waiting really till we got Tritium++ finished before I started putting it out there. But I have a feeling next year is going to be a very good year for us. I mean, it's looking good. I mean, the way Anarchapulco is evolving already too, it's going to be really wonderful. And we're going to be able to present a lot of really cool stuff that I think you guys will find really fascinating. Some of which is from a computer program I found. I mean, basically finding private keys, not like actually people's private keys, but like the number complexity of private keys. It's number matrices. It's really fascinating. And it is really even more fascinating that they seem to have this neurological effect. And some of the old ancient arts of like spatial organization like feng shui are based on these, which is really fascinating. So we'll be explaining a little bit more about that at Anarchapulco, and getting you guys more involved in that. And some of the people know what I've been developing. Like Phil, I've showed him a bit. And I guess before I go too much into the Q and A's, Phil is the ambassador judge. Phil, would you like to give any updates on the ambassador side of things, or do you want to wait till the next AMA? If you're on.
I'm basically just everyone's just kind of waiting for 5.1. I know Sohan's been working on society a lot, and I know Anon has something going on. I'm not sure exactly what. Yeah, I know a lot of people criticize the starfish, but I think this past year we've had a lot of good learning experiences. So, and like a lot of things you can't really learn just from, reading a book. You have to experience it. You have to experience the emotions of, basically nepotism and like temptation and being corrupted. And so I think we learned a lot of good things from this past year. So
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah,
be
it's been a good beta testing round. It's been really cool to see like our core system evolving, and I mean, even coming into new concepts of like, well, what, evidence works, but like what are other ways that we can start to enforce systems, besides like, just like, evidence can be planted, right? Like, are there other circumstances we can start to develop around that, and how it can self-regulate, and that's been really cool. I mean, I really haven't had been involved with the starfish at all. I've just been coding for the past 6 months, I think, since Phil really took over the ambassador judge stuff. So it's been really cool to see it evolve, and I really appreciate your help, Phil, in managing all of this and help it keep going smoothly. We've had a couple arm deallocations, we've had some chair deallocations. The jury's working really well. It's the judicial branch and everything's kind of really finding its place. We've got regular audits happening now. We're getting the consistent meetings with the joint budgeting sessions, and it seems to be working pretty well. I mean, from your perspective, Phil, kind of being an outsider, I'm kind of close to the architecture. What has your perspective been on the things that have been working well and the things that need some work?
well, for it to really work, we need like adequate funding. Otherwise, it's hard to really like role play like the money aspect of it. Like people have to feel like they're competing for like real funds. So I think, you know, once the price of Nexus goes up, we'll be able to do that more. But
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely learned a lot. It's better to make the mistakes now, I think. So,
Yeah.
and I think we just need to kind of template some things to make everything just run more smoothly. But the structure, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah, it
Definitely.
seems to have been holding up pretty well through a lot of different circumstances too, with chairs and arms, and I mean it really has been really interesting to watch how it all has played out and how it's resolved itself, and it's still functioning, and we've had unhealthy arms at certain points, but everything else was still working correctly. Other arms were still healthy, even if one arm was unhealthy, which I think is a really good testament to that too, is that all this autonomy and independence from all these, you could have a completely bad arm, which usually, it spoils an entire organization, but everything was able to still keep running and keep managing. It has a lot of fault tolerance. I've noticed it can handle a lot, and we've had a lot of people infiltrating it, trying to corrupt it from within, or just trying to, raid the piggy bank, things like that. And it seems to have resolved itself pretty well. I mean, it's still rolling, which is really cool.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's drama, but I mean, that's just life, right? There's always going to be drama, so
Yeah.
just gotta figure out how to.
Yeah. But the drama is contained. I haven't even known.
Yeah.
That's what's so beautiful about the isolation too, is like one arm doesn't know another arm's drama. Like, I mean, in a centralized organization, like everyone knows everyone's drama and what's going on and who's doing this and that. Like, I mean, a lot of this drama has really been contained into smaller subspaces where like it hasn't bled out into other places. Developers, like we don't know all the ambassador drama that's going on unless you guys like ask us for a little bit of help and then we come in. But it's been really cool to see how that's been working with too, like containing and isolating drama so that it can't spread. That's one of the reasons why there's the qualities of isolation and all the different cells of people, is so that, drama or corruption or whatever you may want to call it can't bleed out into the other parts of the organization. Because I mean, that's where, organizations start to really fail. And that's one of the really bad, choke points of centralized organizations is, it just takes one or two people to corrupt the entire thing. Where in this, like, it's very difficult, for people to try to push their weight around, outside of their arm, really. So and I've seen the pushing and pulling on the arms working pretty well. I'm pretty sure you've witnessed that too, Phil, where, if one arm's not pulling as much weight as the other arms want, then they start inquiring, and then that starts putting pressure on them. And you got this really nice pushing and pulling between all the chairs that really keeps the arms accountable to each other and keeps them driving things forward. And then, with the jury, having that, as a potential, remedy for, bad behavior, it really does set a precedence. And it has really, I think, motivated people in a lot of ways, not like out of fear, but just simply, out of, the synergy that you develop in your group. And then, your group, does really good. And then that reflects on the other groups, which motivates them to do better too, and so on and so forth. So it's been really cool to watch, definitely.
And that's what makes it autonomous, because I think a lot of people just think autonomous means like just voting or something, but it's more than that, I think. So
Yeah, and it's checking and balancing on every level. Like, I mean, in the U.S. democracy, for instance, you have a king, you elect the king, but he's still a king. He has ultimate power. This breaks power up into small subsets, and it requires a vote on every one of these levels. So, if you come intending to corrupt the organization, you have to, go through every step and not be discovered. And just like, the analogy of, the jar of jelly beans, if you average 100 people's guesses of how many jelly beans are in a jar, you come up, with about a 97% accuracy, right? People together see, as long as they're able to see together, right? And that this really kind of, really nurtures that concept too, where, it becomes very difficult, where a conventional centralized system, all you have to do is get, in bed with the CEO, and then now you have ultimate authority over everything, and you can bypass all of those other people that could potentially detect, malicious behavior. Now it's detected on every level, and you have to, be the best of the best of the best to rise up within it. So you get this natural meritocracy where the best people bubble up to the top, but, they act as representatives rather than, authorities, and represent their people, which, creates that bottom up structure, which is it's been really cool. It's been cool. I really appreciate you spending some time to help on the judicial side of things. Um, is there any other comments that you want to add, Phil, before I go into start answering questions?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay, cool. Question number one, what's the difference between a node and a seed node? Doesn't seed node create centralization? Why can't every node be a seed node? A seed node is simply just the first node that you talk to on the network. When you fire up your wallet, Nexus is a network full of a bunch of different IP addresses. You don't know who's on the network, right? Seed node tells you the list of addresses of who they've recently talked to, so you can make direct peer-to-peer connections to them. It's not centralized. It's just the main point, because you need to have a point to connect to in order to get a list of peers to connect to other peers. So that's what a seed node is primarily functioning as. The only requirement you really need to be a seed node is you need to have an open port so somebody can connect to you. Most nodes can't actually be connected to if they're behind network address translators or they didn't get their port forwarded. So a seed node is essentially just a node running on a data center. Also, it helps with syncing. Like, you wouldn't want to sync from somebody's wallet on a slow internet connection because they're going to have to upload all the blocks to you, and it's going to be very slow in order to do so. So a seed node also it helps with the synchronization. And right now for clients, for operating clients, but that's just in the beta phase. When we get to the full release, any node will be able to service clients, right? So it'll function in that way. So just think of a seed node as the first node that you ever talk to. That it's called a seed because it's a DNS seed. You create a domain name. Right now it's node1.nexus.io through node4.nexus.io. And those are hard coded into the code base so that when you fire up your wallet at first, it knows who to connect to start syncing and to get other addresses of peers to connect to. So a seed node doesn't have any authority over anything. They're simply just a point to connect with the rest of the network. Archiving files and NFXS for yourself seems easy. Your SIG chain has access to the files, but how will you be able to upload a file that you want to make available to everyone, i.e. for download? Will it be possible? Yeah, so basically the Nexus file system, you'll have an encryption option, or you'll have a public shared option. I want to upload this file in the file system as a public shared file. You're going to create your register that represents the file, and the register is going to contain some metadata of the main point in which you can connect to discover other peers that are servicing that file. And then every one of the peers runs an HTTP server. So if you want to connect to and download a file over HTTP, you can go into your web browser, type in that web URL, and then boom, you're able to get that file. So I want to eventually develop, I've talked about this before, a DNS system that piggybacks off of Nexus so that we have a specific namespace that represents Nexus.io per se, and then name records in that namespace can be issued and read by our name server running Nexus.io, so that you can essentially buy a name in that namespace, and that becomes a subdomain on Nexus.io, and that can be registered without having to go through the domain registrar. Like I said, we'll write our own name server that can do that. I'd like to see that so that you can register your file under that name as a subdomain as your site, so you can start hosting sites. Obviously, the file and the metadata will have searchable information, so that starts augmenting the decentralized search. I forgot to mention too pre-search. If anybody's familiar with that, Colin Pape, he's known him for a number of years. We're a little behind on the collaboration we were talking about doing in May of this year, but we're working on a decentralized search index, so we can have Nexus.io search and pre-search, and start developing our own indexing system where people can basically, old school, submit your website and start having decentralized search, but in a way that we have multiple parties contributing to this open index, right? And the open index can be a hybrid network, or it can be, on the Nexus public network. So that's another really important thing, that, the search comes in with the file system. So essentially, there's already an HTTP server built into your Nexus wallet. That's how the API communicates with the front end. So it's not very difficult to just have that deploy for any specific file, so that you can just upload a file and say that you want it publicly viewable, and then you can select the name record that it's searchable by or accessible by, or some sort of hash, and then you just go to api.nexus.io / whatever hash, and then it'll load the file from whatever node, and use that as your gateway node essentially, so that you'll be able to just deploy and have your own hosted files without having to have any web servers. So hosting will be built into the file system essentially. Is what I'm saying there. So you won't have to fire up an Apache server and deal with all of that configuration and stuff. I want it to just be a one-stop shop, one-click go as much as possible. Multi-user mode operation, is it logging a few people in a one SIG chain? Multi-user mode is different people in a different SIG chains. It just keeps the multiple sig chains in the memory. Essentially, when you log in, it's storing it in an encrypted pointer, and it's using those credentials to generate transactions. What would be the procedure for adding and withdrawing permission? Okay, so you're talking about not multi-user mode, but you're talking about the next hash scripts or the ledger level virtual machine. So if you want to add or withdraw permissions, you'll have your main sig chain master credentials, right? And those are the ones that can allocate, deallocate other sets of credentials. So that you can, create one that, says, hey, I want to add permission to this person, or I want to remove. You'll be able to create an immutable permission system if you want. If you want the master credentials to be an and, you can do that. But that's just going to basically come down to the script and what you program in the script, which is just all going to be Boolean logic. Hey, here's your master. This one can modify this. This credential has access to just produce trust operators, right? Which means that you can only stake with it. So you use that to log into your staking account. But you won't be able to send from that. Even if somebody compromises your staking credentials, they won't be able to unstake or any of that, because you just build that into that specific authentication. And then you also have, a bit of time release systems too. So you could say the set of credentials, if the sig chain has been inactive for 1 year, the set of credentials can unlock them, right? And that's how you start getting into crypto wills and things like that. So think of it as kind of like a multi-access pattern in the actual ledger level virtual machine. And that's, what drives the two-factor authentication too. It's just a simple and logic. And, just like a conditional contract, it's just a mix of ands and ors. That's essentially what you have. Will it be possible to install mail servers and websites on NXS, or is it just a file storage? It's going to be a file storage. Mail servers, websites, yes. Mail servers, emails, just part of my language, but it's a horrible protocol. Okay, sorry, I didn't say anything bad. I did good. It's just a terrible protocol, period. Okay, I can send from your email address. Okay, case closed. It's just so I'm not necessarily super enthusiastic about doing POP protocols, which, if anybody doesn't know, POP is retarded. It stands for Post Office Protocol. Woohoo, Post Office, whatever. But yeah, so not necessarily on the email per se, but it's not going to be a computational hosting system. It'll be a file hosting system. So you'll be able to load files if you want to have, an email server, save your emails in the distributed file system encrypted, so you can access them in a distributed way. You could do that. I'm pretty much the peer-to-peer messenger is going to rule out the need for email. It's a peer-to-peer messaging protocol, and it's essentially like what email is you're connecting to their mail server, and that's why you need to have the MX record, mail exchanger record. It tells you what server to talk to, and it's really just like client to server. When you send an email, you're just talking to their server, and if you can't access their server, you can't send the email. Peer-to-peer messenger will provide all of that and more, and be fully encrypted, quantum resistant, things like that. So I'm not really focused on email. I think it's a really archaic technology. The peer-to-peer messenger, you could build an email like app on top of it that feels like email, and using your username, it'll feel like you're able to email someone. And you can build an interface on top of the peer-to-peer messenger API that feels like email if you want. But I'm not planning on supporting Post Office Protocol or IMAP or simple message transfer protocol. All of those are just, I do not like plain text protocols. I think they're highly inefficient. They were designed to make them easy to debug, but they consume a lot of bytes, and I don't like it. So the peer-to-peer messenger API, I think of that as like it's an API. So you can build any sort of messaging system on top of that, which, it could be an email-like messaging system, or a Telegram-like messaging system, or a Signal-like messaging system. Any dApp developer will be able to build anything on that, right? Or even just a simple file transfer protocol between two nodes. Either of those, like it's a generic protocol that will allow you to develop these things on top of it, which, you could develop some sort of email system, but, using XM and email servers and stuff, I'm not planning on it. Like ultimately with Nexus, that's all you really need. You won't need to run a LAMP server, and, LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP. You won't need to run any of that. You should just LLL Tau that should do all the things that you need to build, so that you don't really have to log into a server and configure a server and do all that stuff. You just run API commands in Nexus, and your app can do that. So you don't need to have all these other peripheral things. We are building a new internet. On the current internet, there is a www protocol. What will our protocol be, and how will it work? www just stands for World Wide Web. That doesn't really mean anything. The protocol that the web is driven by is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, HTTP. And then below that, you have Transport Control Protocol, TCP, and then below that again, you have Internet Protocol, IP. We're all the way down on Internet Protocol. So Internet Protocol IP addresses go away. Your Nexus protocol identifiers, right? So you'll have an NP identifier and an NP routing locator. It's similar to Lisp, where you'll have your main identifier. Think of it as like having your own phone number on the internet that doesn't change. So when I go from Wi-Fi to mesh to SAT or whatever, you'll have the same common interface, which works for the peer-to-peer messaging, right? Peer-to-peer is really difficult to do because your IP address is always changing, so I can't always directly connect. And we have a lot of aggregation requirements in the actual conventional IP system because there's not enough IP addresses for all the devices. So you usually aggregate behind a Wi-Fi or a NAT, which is called the network address translator. But that, if you don't have some sort of port forwarding, you can't actually make incoming connections to it, which is required to form a peer-to-peer connection. So our protocol is called the Nexus protocol, or we're still going to support Transport Control Protocol. That's the only one. User datagram packets, UDP and TCP on layer 4 we're doing, but the IP is not going to exist. I mean, we'll be able to interoperate with IP, but consider an IP address as a new locator, and your GSL, geospatial locator, will be another locator on the Nexus protocol. So Nexus protocol will be able to interact and interoperate with IP, and you'll be able to have certain nodes that are gateways to it. So it'll kind of act as an ad hoc network to start, but as it grows, it'll basically grow beyond the need to use IP addresses as locators. And once you start getting more of the actual mesh satellite, then you'll be able to use geospatial locators and wide radius locators. So that's why we have the locator layer. Is we're supporting, IP is a subset of the one stack, which is the open Nexus execution stack. And then web-driven technology on top of that will obviously still support hypertext transfer protocol, even though I really dislike that protocol. We still got to use it because most of the web browsers use it today. And then eventually I'd like to develop our own DNS protocols. Like I was describing how we could build a bridge using Nexus.io. So all of you guys can have your own hosted sites on Nexus.io as a subdomain. Eventually, like Namecoin did, you develop a plugin to the web browser that allows it to do a DNS lookup. So eventually I would like it where you could do .nexus or something like that, have our own domain extension that can be read by web browsers as a browser extension to where that looks up on chain your DNS record. And then what that'll do is that'll route through from the DNS record into, the main, basically file header that tells you where the nodes are that are connecting that file. And then you just open up an HTTP request to them and boom, you get your data back, right? So it'll still support some of the conventional web layers, but a lot of the stuff under the hood is what's going to really be changing, which will change a lot of our authentication and access patterns. What is the quickest way to implement the remote login feature? That's kind of an open-ended question. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking. I can tell you the way that I'm going to implement it. It's generally the quickest way, but in order to do something quick, you have all these prerequisites that need to be accounted for, which is what I've been doing for the last year or two, developing those prerequisites. So rebuilding the entire authentication system was a prerequisite that helps us be able to build it faster. But remote login is fairly straightforward. It just can run off the peer-to-peer messaging API, where you just have to have some sort of communication between the web server's node and your own local blockchain node, which will be simply accessed through an API. So it's going to be pretty quick and easy. It's already, a lot of the prerequisites are already in there, but the quickest way to implement it is, there's lots of ways. And I should say that setting the foundational frameworks first is the quickest way, instead of wanting to code all this stuff that's not generic, and like all specialized code. That's the slowest way. The fastest way is you have generic templated frameworks that you develop that you can use so that you don't have to keep writing more and more and more of the same repeated code. That's actually what started me developing the lower level protocol, is I just had a lot of different servers that Nexus needed to run, and I had the same socket logic, so I just used polymorphism and templates in C++, and was able to create kind of a polymorphic inheritance hierarchy, where you model your own packet and you just input it in as a template, and boom, now you have a new protocol and you don't have to rewrite all the socket code. So that's how I get these things done quickly. That's the fastest way, I guess, that we'll be able to implement the remote login feature, is just having all the prerequisites developed, which they are pretty well formed now. As I said, when I built the authentication system there's an enumerated value in there for remote or local login. So it's all set up for that already, and the API is all set up for it. So it's just plug in a couple extra pieces and you got remote login. As a developer, do you prefer small incremental updates or big updates like 5.1? It's hard to say. I mean, I guess what ends up happening is they end up being large updates because the way my mind works, one thing leads to 10 things, that leads to 10 more things. And then it's just like, there's so much to do, so little time, and it's difficult for me to know where to cut things off and how to design and where to spend my time now in order to get it. But I'm generally, I prefer more incremental, small updates because it's big updates. They take a lot, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong potentially in it. This one ended up having to be such a big update because it was the entire API layer, which ended up being about 100,000 lines of code that needed to be redone. But it in a way, this is still an incremental, small incremental, but in a way, it's also huge and a massive refactor, right? But I've set it up with all of this new framework code where it'll be a lot easier to incrementally release these things. The API just needed to be redone, and so I'm glad I spent the time to do it. And we added all these new additional features to it now. But now incremental updates is what I'm planning on. As you heard me say, I'm probably going to break the 5.2 into I want the file system, or not the file system, I want the peer-to-peer messenger and the crypto API done first, right? That's going to be the first incremental update. And then remote login will probably be its own after that. And then, the file system will probably be its own after that. And then we get to Nexus scripts in 6.0 and pooled staking and all that stuff. But, in the process, I might throw pooled staking in there too, because it's really not that complicated to implement. It's just getting all these ducks in a row. I mean, just for a frame of reference, the amount of code, not counting comments or anything, is about a 5,500 page book. So imagine a big fat book, 5,500 pages, where if you miss a period, things blow up. So it's, I prefer to do little adjustments as much as possible, but there are times where big overhauls are needed, like 5.1, and here we are with it. But from here forward, I think the community would appreciate more incremental updates as well too, because you got more consistency. When to expect the next, and you're always getting these new features rolled out. So that's my preferred way if possible, but it's sometimes the ideological way isn't always practical, right? And in this case, like, this just could not have been done as a small incremental update because there were so many massive things that needed to be changed. Okay. And the Nexus will be independent and developed without Colin and the team today. You are one of the few developers. What would happen if you left the project? What is the point when Nexus becomes unstoppable? Well, Kuba, I wouldn't leave the project. I don't know if you guys understand, but like, you're all like my children. Like, this is like my third child or my sixth child. No, actually, sorry, I have 5 kids. But it's just, this is a labor of love. I mean, I've coded it. I put all my money into it, like funded it pretty much till it could fund itself in 2017. And, through 2019, I funded a lot of it, from everything I had. I mean, this isn't something that I'm here to do, to be something or whatever. It's because the world needs it. And, I've dedicated a lot of my life to that because I'm seeing, and I foresaw all these things before, COVID and everything, that, we needed these technologies. So I started developing it, and I'll continue developing it. Now, as far as developing redundancy, I've had multiple candidates that I attempted to download my brain into. Paul was one of them. We saw how that turned out. I had to redo everything. So, it's difficult to find somebody that has the same level of, how should I say it, like the love for beautiful things, but the technical proficiency and also the foresight into the future to understand what the world's going to need. I've got somebody I'm going to be speaking with towards the end of the year that is a good candidate. Hopefully they're a candidate. I've got another couple people too that can, but it's just a matter of time of just downloading my brain into the right people. We need redundancy as much as possible, but I mean, even so now, like, Kendall's been able to do quite a bit. I've seen him doing some back-end stuff. He's been able to make new APIs and figure out how to do private mode and stuff. So I'm really also developing Nexus to where it won't need consistent maintainers in the future, such as, we have to do a hard fork, let's say, or like Bitcoin needed a hard fork, let's say, for a block size increase. If we need a block size increase, just make that in a system register and then have that voted so that the system can upgrade itself and self-maintain. So I'm designing it to be where it won't need a full-time Colin. right? Ultimately in the future. It should, once it's done, it should be pretty well done. Obviously, bugs and things will need to be fixed along the way, but I'd estimate the next few years. I mean, it really just depends on how many people are willing to step up to. Like, if you want me to download my brain into you and you're up for it, come let me know. Can't pay you right now. You're gonna have to do volunteering, but if you want to increase the redundancy and improve it, I'm happy to share all the knowledge that I've learned, just as long as you use it for the right reasons. And to me, the code is sacred. Like this Nexus code is sacred to me. Like it's a work of art, right? It's more than just a technology to me. And that's how you get this mathematical symphony, or how you get this incredible scalability and all these technical know-how, is just from all these little details that you have to take into account, right? So if you do want to come help, that's my number one criteria, is you have to see that too, right? How important it is. This isn't just some corporate code job that we just want to get the task done so that the price can go up. No, we're building a technology that could last hundreds of years into the future. So it needs to be done right. It needs to be done right now. If you try to fix it later, you're going to end up with Ethereum, right? And we see how that works. It doesn't. Okay, period. So no shortcuts, no nothing. It's difficult to do, and it's pushed me and my own self, like, I mean, many times over, into new areas of understanding and gnosis, and it's me a better person, because I mean, I really stopped drinking alcohol, like, I think 4 years ago, just for Nexus, partially too, and partially I just was like, this is retarded. Why am I drinking beer? This is stupid. Why am I going to drink to make myself feel stupider? It's not chilling me out. But I also did it partially just to be more on point. This is my life. This is what I'm here to give to you. This is my gift I'm giving to you guys. It's not about I'm happy to pay my rent. That's all I really care about, and have a place, take care of my kids. But this is also in a way taking care of my kids and your kids and our kids' kids. We're at a critical time in humanity right now, and we need to really band together and work together to do this. It's going to take all of us to do that, right? So to me, it's not a job. It's a way of life. It's the continuation of my entire life and soul's purpose. It started, as I stated, with understanding alternative energy systems and parametric resonance with hydrogen and stuff like that, and then it led into all this crypto stuff, which really is fundamental. So to me, like I said, it's a way of life. It's a culture. It's I'm here to fulfill a purpose, and I will not stop until I fulfill that purpose, period, right? And a lot of the team is that way too. Like, we're seeing this is like something that we have a chance to make the world a better place. We have a chance to get rid of all of these despotic control systems in the world, right? By rendering them obsolete. And so, I mean, I'll take that chance, man, and I'll work that until I can't breathe anymore. That's how I work. But obviously, I recognize the redundancy issue, and that's finding a calling phone is difficult. But I think I'm onto one. I think I got one. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. We'll find out probably by next year. I'll keep you guys up to date. And if he's interested in gung ho and helping and stuff, you guys will meet him too. So we just need at least one of their calling to be better than what we have now. So yeah, that's just so you guys know my motivation. Like, I do this from my heart. If you guys haven't noticed, I do it because I love you guys. I love everyone. I love the planet. I love everyone here. And I believe life can be beautiful if we're able to create that beauty ourselves, and that this whole imposed system that we've grown up in and thinking is really kind of an aberration to what life really is. If we all remember being children, that joy and enthusiasm and love for life, man, that's just that's what I live for, and that's what I live to help create in other people, and that's what I'm here for. If you guys, that's why I say I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by love. I care about people, and I care about the future, and I care about our children's future. And I definitely don't want to leave our children with, the mess that we're in right now. Like, that old world dies with our generation, and, our kids need to have a better life and a better way. And, the only way we're going to do that is if we can rely on it ourselves and each other, and not, these centralized, corporatocracies, essentially. What's the timeline approximately to complete 3DC? It's really hard to say. I mean, that's like just asking 40 years ago, hey, what's your timeline to invent the transistor? I mean, it's architecturally completed, but I mean, I want to say that it's going to come pretty quickly, but knowing my history, I should probably double or triple that idea. So I mean, Tritium plus plus, like all of the augmented contracts and stuff, I'm fairly confident. As long as life doesn't demand too much of my time away from the computer, I'll be able to get a lot of that done through 2023, and then 2024 we get into a mean. I mean, you're going to see a slow, steady, increase, in the functionality as we get there. A mean's going to have, you'll log in, opt in to join a state channel, to start joining the sharding. But like even before that, you're going to have, the data sharding and stuff. So, it's a slow. I'd give it at least another 3-4 years maybe, before we get to Obsidian fully complete. But in parallel to that, I'm developing a lot of the operating system, which really is going to run on that. But conceptually speaking, like the 3DC is not that complex compared to Tritium and Tritium plus plus, just because there's a lot more going on in Tritium and Tritium plus plus, getting it right. Amine and Obsidian is basically just taking the linear blockchain and breaking it up into different sets, right? So there's no real architectural halts that I'm on with it. Everything's really materialized a lot more efficient than I had intended, which is good. So yeah, I'd say probably was 2022, almost 2023 now. 25, probably 26. I'd give it probably a year each. As long as I can keep everything rolling like I've been, and not have to redo an entire code base again, making forward progress, I'd give it probably a year each. So a year for 2023 to really, first phase Tritium plus plus, end of year, 7.0 full Tritium plus plus framework done by end of 2023, and then Amine by end of 2024, and Obsidian end of 2025, I'd suspect. And by then we're going to have more the operating system done as well, getting that done in parallel. If I can get a clone, then they can help with the operating system, or I can do operating system while they work on Tau stuff. So it's not too far. I mean, 5 years ago it was definitely a lot further behind, because there's just been so much architectural work to do, and then the implementation and the engineering of it. So that's my best guess, but please don't take that as a hard timeline. Just my best estimate that I can give you. Okay. Peer-to-peer messages must have history archive on local device, and thus easy to lose. Well, you have history located archived on your device, but you don't want to be storing those on a cloud. But if you do, that's where the file system comes in, Robert. So you essentially have the file system that's able to store whatever, right? So when you send a message and it's offline, a relay server will store, a certain number of those encrypted messages to then forward them to the local device, and then the local device, however the developer wants to develop that chat app, can utilize the file system to store your files on a decentralized encrypted cloud if you so choose. That's why I'm building all these different toolkits, and they all work together essentially to help improve the overall user experience, so that you have a message that can be used and stored in the file system, and then you can host that on the file system and HTTP servers and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's it's you can do that just with the file system and how it all works. Any other questions? What exactly happens in 2024 when we reach 78 million? Well, it just decays to a minimum. So I think it's calculated about 450,000 Nexus per year. At that point, it's about 1 Nexus per minute. So 1440 minutes. Let's see. 40 times 55,600 Nexus per year. So, I mean, I think by 2100, there will be like 100 million Nexus with all the staking and everything like that. Let's see, August 2022, 28th. I don't want to cause panic, but take your money out of Bittrex. Good advice. Never keep your money on Bittrex. Always keep your money in your own wallet if you can. Always not your keys, not your crypto. If you need to trade, but keep your Bitcoin off of exchanges. Keep your coins off of exchanges. Binance, Bittrex, anything. Keep your money off exchanges, not your keys, not your crypto. Thank you for reminding everybody about that August 2022. It's important for you. This is why we built SigChain. This is why we built all these new technologies. Keep your money in your wallet, okay? Because if you don't, you're fueling their ability to be a bank. what happens is, Binance, if you've seen, they've done like, proof transactions of the Bitcoin, and they're throwing around 150,000 Bitcoin, right? Well, people haven't withdrawn it, have they? Well, is there anything stopping them from being able to buy and sell with those Bitcoins? Nothing, right? Okay, well, you can keep, maybe 10% of them on a hot wallets for people to withdraw, and then go gamble the other 90%. What's that called? Fractional reserve banking, right? Don't support it. Keep your coins off of exchanges as much as possible, and use decentralized exchanges where they're possible as well. It's really important. Thank you, August 22, for bringing that to everyone's attention. So did I answer that, Mr. Wu? Did you feel that it'll produce about 525,600 Nexus per year coming in, and that'll just be it'll be somewhat deflationary, not deflationary. Sorry, it's not going to be compounding inflation. So you'll just get this small amount, per year. But then when we get the fee burning model built well, that'll be able to reduce the actual supply, right? It'll be able to reduce the amount into supply to reach a threshold there. So, with the voting on the different fees associated with different transactions and all of those being burned, you as a community through the DAO will be able to vote to say, hey, we want to increase the fee for a name, for instance, to 2,000 Nexus instead of 1,000 Nexus or whatever, or namespace, sorry. I think it's 2,000 now, so I should say 4,000, in order to reduce the supply, so that as the community is able to vote through the DAO on higher fees, then you're able to actually control, how much is emitted. So, if you want to increase the fees, then you can actually cause the supply to deflate, right? Or it could go 100 million, 99 million, 98 million, so on and so forth. Or you could choose to make it go higher, right, and increase the actual supply. Sorry, that's Warrior. It's our old horse. he's very vocal. But so you have essentially, so you'll be able to control, how much. So it can be inflationary or deflationary, whatever you guys choose to vote on the fee model, right? And you choose whatever contracts are being utilized, whatever ones you want to increase or decrease the fees on. Then you can balance that to say, okay, well, we want it to be slightly inflationary, but then there's a guaranteed supply always coming out for the mining industry that doesn't rely entirely on the fees. So you can actually create a really cool dynamic where you get, this new security that comes around the emitted, coins, right, through staking and mining, but then you pull that back and still maintain security because you still have that guaranteed amount, but then the fees can then be, against that, essentially, to reduce the supply. So you can either keep it at a consistent supply where it won't increase in supply, or it can decrease in supply if you increase fees and you want to go through a deflationary cycle, or you guys can vote and increase the supply as well. Does mining stop then? No, mining does not stop, Mr. Wu. It works forever, and the 3DC is designed with mining in mind as well. It's just one of the consensus methods. Think of it as kind of the bow that wraps everything together. Just because mining is a really good way to emit the currency, it requires electricity and it's fairly robust. It's going to be a decentralized mining protocol though, so it'll reduce the mining pools existing so much. You'll basically create kind of like a Merkle tree of all of the shares, and you'll be awarded based on how much work you did in that time span. So, I could, maybe I did 1% of the proof of work for that 1 minute. I get awarded 1% of the reward, right? If that makes sense. So you have all of the actual work going to contribute to the security rather than just the one hash wins, one hash rules all. So it really takes the mining to the next level, and it really gets rid of a lot of these issues, such as the mining pools and centralization and so on and so forth. Any interest in getting listed on Binance competitors like Coinbase, Huobi, etc.? I mean, it's a double-edged sword. There's one side of it where it's good. Hey, you got more liquidity, you got more people available. But then you have the other side of it is like, well, people are only trading because you're a ticker on their site and they don't even know about Nexus, right? There's a lot of people that were trading on Binance that didn't know anything about Nexus. It was just something that they traded. So I feel like to some degree, it can be a double-edged sword where you can actually get, worse conditions from being on those where, Bitcoin itself built the exchanges, right? People built exchanges to trade Bitcoin because people wanted Bitcoin, period. That really is kind of the end all be all for me. That's the go big or go home. If we're building a currency, right? We're not building a security, we're not building an ICO, we're building a currency. And, from the time that I got into crypto, it was currencies, it was cryptos that built exchanges, not exchanges building cryptos. So, if we feel we need to go to an exchange to get that, I'm not necessarily sure that's the right path. I mean, we could very well just build decentralized ATM networks, decentralized exchanges, all this new infrastructure, and we won't need them anymore. And then people that buy Nexus are people that believe and actually know in Nexus, so then you get a stronger market, and I think you get less puppy and dumpy and trendy trading essentially. So I'm not currently pursuing that, but the market maker that I've been talking to, they have connections to Gate.io and other different exchanges, which I don't think it would hurt us to be on more exchanges and have better availability in non-KYC exchanges. So where I left off with them is after we released Tritium++, I was going to pick the conversation up back with them again. I'm still planning on doing that, so I can let you guys know what the market makers say on different exchanges they think that we should be listed on, because I definitely think it would be good for us to have more distribution of the exchanges and not be completely stonewalled into a KYC only exchange, because I do think that does limit us to a degree. But as far as getting on exchange so we can access the liquidity, I think it's better to market to gain awareness of Nexus rather than using an exchange to try to do that. I think people, as they become aware of it, they'll want to buy the coin wherever they can if you've got a good enough coin. So we need to focus on building a really solid coin, and less on just trying to gain our notoriety through pre-existing liquidity pools that really are just fractional reserve. Plus, yeah, there's more liquidity, but how much of that liquidity is actual users' liquidity and how much is it people's money being gambled, right? I'm not sure, and it's just I would like to know that before we pursue too much on certain exchanges. So we should be selective on the ones that we do decide to distribute to, because I have noticed that we've been kind of in our own trends since Binance. It's double-edged sword again. The price is lower, but we're trending in our own way. I remember every time Bitcoin would dump, Nexus would dump too, when we were on Binance, and this time Bitcoin dumped and we've been going up, which has been really good to see. So we shall see what we shall see. If they ban proof of stake, what if they ban proof of stake? I mean, we're not really technically just proof of stake. I mean, I honestly don't know all the legal ramifications of that. I mean, you can't really ban what we're doing because we don't control the issuance. We don't control the staking. We don't control who can gain a coin or not. We can't shut it down. So there's not really anything I could do if they ban it. It's like, well, this is a pre-existing protocol. Since we've been, doing proof of stake since 2015, I don't know if there's grandfather laws. I'm not really too concerned or worried about the regulatory environment because we build good stuff. We build good platforms that are decentralized and headless, and people use them. There's nothing they can regulate. There's nothing they can do about it. So, you're welcome, Mr. Wu, on the deflationary concept. Trust score is also great to have. Yes, it is. Yep. Okay. Thank you. Radiant. Can we get a security score on our Suchain tech? Yeah, I'm not sure how to get a security score. Mr. Wu, if you want to check into that, that might be something that would be good to look. I mean, getting more external verification of our security properties, I think would be good, definitely. Created a way to store Bitcoin using a Suchain. What would happen after Nexus is complete? Might it be advantageous for us to implement that sooner to show off our tech? Yeah, I've been considering that, Phil, especially when we get to 6.0, building at least the LLDA Bitcoin node. I think that'll be really important. And storing your Bitcoins in your Nexus wallet, I think that'll be huge. Because I feel like we can make a bridge to the Bitcoin maximalists. There's been a lot of Bitcoin maximalists that are still somewhat receptive to Nexus because we're not, doing the shitcoin thing. We're just like, hey, we're the best. We're better than Bitcoin. We're going to take over Bitcoin. Respect our roots. We're here to develop technology and get that technology back to Bitcoin. It's really, really important. So it's, yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you, Phil. Having that sooner rather than later would be good. And then, atomic swaps with that too, because even just having liquidity in the atomic swaps, people will be able to buy Nexus for that Bitcoin and then transfer that Nexus to Bittrex and then, or vice versa. And if you get more liquidity on the atomic swaps, then that liquidity will eventually arbitrage into all the different centralized exchanges. So I would like to get on that sooner rather than later. I was talking to the Komodo guys and getting added to their decks, and they wanted to also use the lower level database too. I'll reach back out to them again. They might be another good project to showcase some of our tech. The lower level database has been a really popular item. And then I'm also building a database engine, not on 5.1, but a database API. So as a dApp developer, you'll be able to just fire up your own database separate from the Nexus blockchain and locally to your node. directly in the LLM tau. So it's one-stop shop. Just think of it as like a universal one-stop shop. That's our fundamental go-to. And WeChat has markets, and you can do currencies, and you can message people, you can do posts and stuff. Nexus is that, right? But decentralized. And so what we need to do to prove the power of decentralization is to make superior technology that has a superior user experience, and then people move away from those inferior technologies, and then you just so happen to get the benefit that it's decentralized. But it takes a hell of a lot more engineering to make it decentralized and work well, which is why I talk about the code is sacred. Every byte counts, right? Every bit counts, and think down to every bit, think down to every byte, because when you got 10,000 contracts per second, one byte now is 10 kilobytes per second extra, right? Just from one extra byte, you now 10 kilobytes more per second. So once you get into these really large loads, every little byte counts. So that's why I think a lot of people have not been able to fully realize visions of decentralization. Is it just takes an incredible amount of engineering and time and patience and headaches, and never been done before. No time limits. I mean, it takes a hell of a community like you guys to keep going with it too, because it's never been done before. And because of that, there's going to be things that you didn't anticipate in your initial designs that you have to work through as it goes forward. Yeah, the Radiant, that's a good point. Don't keep anything on a SEX. Buy and hold. Keep in your own wallet, not your keys, not your crypto. Also out of principle, we don't want to feed the banks. Exchanges are the banks of crypto, so we don't want to feed them with our money and our time. Everybody, thinks that our vote is in democracy and on this piece of paper, you vote for someone who represents you. But what people don't always recognize is that you have a vote in everything you do. And that vote is what you choose to give your energy to. Your money is your energy. So, what you choose to focus on, what you choose to give, what you choose to create, whose time you choose to give to, that's your vote. So don't vote for platforms that are not going to be in service to the people, to decentralization, right? To a brighter future. Keeping your money on Binance is just as much as empowering Binance to use that money to do whatever they want with. And, if they can, they will. One man just is, I don't care who you are, one person can't have too much power. It just gets to their head. And, when you have 150,000 Bitcoins sitting in your exchange, you're a powerful man. You can do a lot of things with it. We don't want to give people those temptations. So, make sure to tell your friends and your friends' friends and everyone to just keep your coins off the exchange, keep them in your wallet as much as possible. If there's other things that you want us to try to figure out, like, hey, I want to keep my Bitcoin in the Nexus wallet like that, we can do, right? So just make sure to speak up if there's anything too that you think technically needs to be developed for you, in order to make that easier for you, right? Thank you very much, Colin. Last question. Can you show your forearm tattoo and say what it is? Yeah, it's my, some people say it looks freaky, but it's my, Unus Mundi is your absolute, it's your connection to your center where all the magic can manifest. So you see there's an infinity here, and then these are three, essentially, revelations. So these are the three Esse quam videre, which means to be, not to seem. That means to be who you are and not to seem like you are something. Amar sin timore means love without fear, and that's the second revelation. And abyssius abyssum invocat means hell calls hell, one misdeed leads to the next. So, don't dip your toes in the radioactive water, because the next thing you know, you're going to be swimming in it. And those three revelations drive towards my strength over the own shadows, right? And then this is 7, 7, 7, 7. And then add Astro Credo, as you guys saw that was at the very end of the 2020 white paper. That means to the stars, I believe, and add infinitum, to infinity without limits, and then to infinity and Unus Mundi, which is the perfect center point where all your magic can manifest through. So in a way, it is my path through the human experience of coming from, the awakening of being, hey, I'm human now, I'm a child, I'm growing up, blah, 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 going through, the three revelations, and rising up, to reach a higher point of, unification and more of the cosmic mind, that it brings you to more, infinite capabilities. And, my work is a good example of that. If anybody's seen, from the very beginning of when Nexus was started to now, the amount I've had to evolve to be able to fulfill it and facilitate it has been a really strong motivation in my life, and it has driven me. It's just I'll spare you guys too many details, but I'm spiritual, right? I'm not religious, and I guess the best way to describe that is religious people are scared of going to hell. Spiritual people have been there and came back, right? So I believe in life, in consciousness, and I've experienced it. I've been to the other side many times, near-death experiences. I've met God, I've met Madre, I've seen the planets, I've flown through neural networks. I mean, I've had a lot of pretty profound spiritual experiences. So my spirituality is based off of experience. And, when people say, do you believe in God? I say, no, I experience God every day. I don't need to believe in God. I experience God. And, what I do here, is part of that experience. And that's part of my motivation that drives me to do what I do. And, give my heart to you guys and, learn to be a better human and, reach higher states of consciousness and, enlightenment essentially. So, it's a many lifetime long process, but this is just kind of my little, I guess, reminder of my path and where I've come from, which, ultimately leads to the cosmos and beyond, the Unus Mundi. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Does anybody else have any questions they want to do before we close? I think this has been a really good AMA. What do we got? 2 weeks from now. Let's check this out. Just want to check my calendar real quick. I think 2 weeks is the 22nd of December. So let's plan on the next AMA on December 22nd. And that way you'll get a full update of, you'll probably be getting some Telegram updates before then. I'll be letting you know about what's going on, probably next week by next Monday or Tuesday. After we go through a weekend of coding and getting the wallet integrated with the new core, we should be able to give you a better estimate. And then that should be just about it. This next mobile wallet update is that's pretty much it. I need to check in with Crystal a little bit more to see how he's doing on the front end of the wallet, and we should be pretty well ready to wrap. So like I said, the tentative schedule is next week. Give an update. We should be able to get a new mobile wallet released by next week, which includes all of the new 5.1 code. It's already been running production environments like Biological and Ecosystems Futures. Beth has been upgraded and running for about a month now. So it's done, and it's just stages of done, I guess you could say. So we're moving into the next stage of done, which is, the new mobile wallet release, which includes all the new client mode stuff, and then a new desktop wallet release with the time lock activation for January 11th is the tentative schedule. But in order to meet that schedule, it's December 8th. I would like to have it out the door by next week. So we'll we need to get Bittrex at least some extra time to upgrade. So they may very well start the conversation with them next week, and they're good people. They're good guys. I've worked with them for 7 years now. Richie and all of them, they're good guys. I really like the Bittrex team. They're very technically competent. I've always been very impressed with Richie and their security. Sometimes they're a little bit uptight on the security, but I mean, other exchanges, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'm working on not saying anything that probably is not advantageous for us to say publicly, but yeah. So I'll keep you guys in the loop for next week, let you know. And any other questions, you can just aggregate them through chairs. Keep posted. We're going to do a joint budgeting session. We're probably going to have an internal call next week, and then we can do the joint budgeting session potentially before this, or on a Wednesday. Once I have all this wrapped up, I'll be able to have a little bit more time. And if you guys want more frequent updates too, if you want me to get on, and do another weekly AMA or something, just let me know. I'm happy to do it. Just make sure to speak up if you want anything. If you need anything, I can't read your mind. So yeah, just keep going. I appreciate everybody's patience. I appreciate everybody sticking with this, and yeah, being a part of this movement and keep spreading the word. And let's keep rocking and rolling, guys. So I guess no other questions. We're good. Okay. Cool. All right, guys. And I decided not to do music today because I don't know if you guys ever want me to play music. Just let me know. I didn't want to like, hey guys, this isn't. I honestly I could give a fuck if you guys want to hear it or not. I'd play music for me. But if you guys ever want some music intros, outros, just let me know. And I'm happy to do it. I got lots of instruments scattered around and stuff. But I think this time probably not, unless anybody says that they want it. I gotta go get on a call in 5 minutes now. Lots of calls today, which is good. Talking to a guy about voting and stuff. But yeah, for the next time, just make sure to let me know if you guys want any. And yeah, make sure to communicate any needs that you have to any of the chairs. Judge is a good, Phil's a good point of contact as a judge to get in contact with me. He's been helping aggregate communications. So if you need to get anything to me or requests or stuff, he's a good point of contact to get through to me and or communicate with the developers or stuff like that. So again, thank you, everybody. It's been a pleasure. And I think we went 2 hours again, just about an hour and 45. But yeah, I look forward to the next AMA. And thank you, everybody.